The dangerous men were never the ones who scared me most. It was the quiet houses that did. The grandfather clock in the Blackwood mansion struck 200 a.m. with the kind of heavy sound that seemed to settle into your bones. Outside, rain slid down the massive windows overlooking the Long Island shoreline, turning the darkness beyond the glass into something endless and cold. I tightened my grip on the laundry basket, pressed against my hip, and moved quietly through the hallway, careful not to wake anyone. Working nights in a mansion that size taught you strange things. How marble floors could echo even beneath soft footsteps. How expensive houses somehow felt emptier than cheap apartments. How rich people spent millions on security systems but still slept like they were waiting for something terrible to happen. I had worked for Nathaniel Blackwood for exactly 11 days. And in those 11 days, I had never once seen the man smile. Not at the cooks. Not at the staff. Not even at his 6-year-old son. Especially not at his son. The hallway lights dimmed automatically as I passed beneath them, casting long shadows across oil paintings and polished blackwood walls. Everything about the mansion felt controlled. Silent. Perfect. But perfection always hid cracks somewhere. I learned that long before I ever stepped foot inside a billionaire's home. A small sound stopped me outside Noah's bedroom. Not crying. Not screaming. Whispering. My chest tightened instantly. I set the basket down near the doorway and knocked softly. Noah silence. Then another whisper. Too low to understand. I slowly pushed the door open. The room smelled faintly like lavender and rain. A small nightlight glowed beside the bed, casting pale gold across dinosaur wallpaper and shelves lined with books most kids his age probably wouldn't care about. Noah Blackwood sat upright beneath his blankets, his pale face almost ghostly in the dim light. His dark hair stuck up messily like he'd been twisting it nervously for hours. But it was his eyes that made my stomach drop. Wide. Frozen. Terrified. "Hey," I whispered carefully. Stepping inside. Bad dream. He didn't answer. Noah rarely spoke much. The house staff said he'd changed after his mother died 2 years earlier. Became quieter. Nervous. Like he was listening for danger no one else could hear. His small hand slowly lifted from beneath the blanket. Then he pointed toward his pillow. I frowned slightly. "What is it?" Another whisper. Barely audible. She left it. Every hair along my arms rose at once. I moved closer to the bed carefully, my pulse beginning to thud harder against my ribs. Who left what? Noah's lower lip trembled. The lady. My throat tightened. There were no women in the house tonight except me and the older cook downstairs. I reached slowly beneath the edge of the pillow, expecting maybe a toy or one of Noah's drawings. Instead, my fingers touched folded paper. Cold paper. I pulled it out carefully. The paper was crisp white, folded perfectly in half, and sealed with a dark red lipstick mark pressed directly in the center. My heartbeat stopped for half a second. Emily, Noah whispered. "Why does it smell like roses?" I stared at the lipstick seal without breathing, then slowly unfolded the note. The handwriting inside looked elegant, beautiful even, which somehow made the words worse. Midnight tomorrow. The boy pays for his father's sins. The room suddenly felt 20 degrees colder. Somewhere downstairs. A door slammed shut. The sound downstairs did not belong in a house that heavily guarded. It was too sharp. Too sudden. Noah flinched beneath his blankets the second it echoed through the hallway. And without thinking, I crossed the room and knelt beside the bed. "Hey," I whispered softly. "Look at me." His breathing came too fast for a 6-year-old. Tiny shoulders shaking beneath the navy blue comforter while rain streaked across the windows behind him. I had seen panic attacks before. My younger brother used to have them after our father disappeared for days at a time. Same frightened eyes. Same frozen silence. "You are okay." I told him gently. I am right here. Noah looked down at the note, still trembling slightly in my hand. Is Daddy going to die? The question hit harder than it should have. Children were not supposed to ask things like that. Not at 6 years old. I swallowed carefully. No. It was the only answer I could give him, even if I was no longer sure it was true. Another sound moved through the mansion below us. Footsteps this time. Fast. Controlled. Multiple people. My stomach tightened instantly. Someone else knew about the note. I stood quickly and crossed toward the bedroom door, opening it just enough to peer into the hallway. 2 security men in black suits moved past the staircase, landing downstairs, speaking urgently into earpieces. One of them glanced toward the upper floor. Every entrance. He snapped quietly. Now. The second man disappeared toward the west wing. My pulse hammered harder. Something was very wrong. I looked back at Noah. Stay here for 1 second. Okay. His small hand suddenly grabbed my wrist before I could move away. Tight. Desperate. Do not leave me. The fear in his voice nearly broke something inside my chest. I will not. I squeezed his hand once before stepping into the hallway. The mansion no longer felt quiet. It felt awake. Like some invisible current had passed through every room at once. Men moved quickly downstairs. Security radios crackled. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled across the ocean. I glanced down at the note again beneath the dim hallway lights. The handwriting was too careful, too elegant. This was not random. Whoever wrote it wanted fear. Slow fear. Precise fear. My eyes drifted toward the lipstick mark sealing the fold. Roses. Noah was right. The paper carried the faint scent of roses underneath the expensive perfume. Then suddenly another detail clicked into place. My blood ran cold. The ink on the note had smeared slightly from moisture. Fresh moisture, meaning whoever left it had not been inside hours ago. They had been inside recently, maybe minutes earlier. A chill crawled down my spine. I turned immediately toward the staircase, just as the front doors downstairs burst open. Every conversation stopped. Every guard straightened instantly. And then he walked in. Nathaniel Blackwood looked like the storm itself had followed him through the doors. Rain darkened the shoulders of his black wool coat. His expression was unreadable, controlled in the terrifying way only powerful men could manage. 2 men flanked him closely, while another handed over a tablet filled with security footage. Nathaniel barely looked at it. "Where is Noah?" he asked. His voice was calm. Too calm. One of the guards answered immediately. "Upstairs." "Sir." Then his eyes lifted. Straight toward me, standing frozen at the top of the staircase. The entire mansion seemed to go still. I suddenly became painfully aware of the note in my hand. Of my heartbeat. Of the fact that every security guard downstairs had noticed me at the exact same moment their boss did. Nathaniel's gaze sharpened instantly. "What is that?" he asked quietly. I opened my mouth. But for half a second, no sound came out at all. The air in the mansion changed. The second Nathaniel Blackwood started walking toward the staircase. Not louder. Somehow quieter. The guards stopped speaking into their radios. The staff near the dining hall lowered their eyes immediately. Even the storm outside seemed farther away beneath the heavy sound of his polished shoes against marble. I tightened my grip around the folded note, suddenly aware that I probably should have handed it over already, but something inside me resisted. Maybe instinct. Maybe fear. Nathaniel stopped at the bottom of the staircase and looked up at me without blinking. Up close. His reputation made perfect sense. He was not just handsome in the polished billionaire way magazines like to photograph. He carried authority differently. Sharper. Colder. Like someone used to making impossible decisions without apologizing for them afterward. Rainwater still clung to the dark strands of his hair near his temples. And the black coat stretched across broad shoulders that looked carved from stone beneath the dim chandelier light. But it was his eyes that unsettled me most. Pale gray, completely focused. I asked you a question, he said quietly. What is in your hand? My throat tightened. Every guard in the room watched me like I might suddenly pull a weapon instead of a piece of paper. I found it in Noah's room. For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Small, dangerous. Nathaniel climbed the stairs slowly, never taking his eyes off me. When he reached the top step, I realized how tall he actually was. At least 6'3", maybe more. The hallway suddenly felt much smaller than it had 30 seconds earlier. I handed him the note carefully. His fingers brushed mine for half a second. Cold, controlled. Nathaniel unfolded the paper silently beneath the hallway light. I watched the exact moment his jaw tightened. Barely noticeable, but enough. The guards downstairs straightened immediately, like they felt the shift too. Who else has seen this? He asked. Only me. And Noah. His gaze snapped back to mine instantly. You showed this to my son. He found it first. The words came out sharper than I intended. He was terrified. Silence stretched between us. Nathaniel looked back down at the note again. Then toward Noah's bedroom door, standing partially open behind me. Where is he? In his room. Nathaniel moved past me immediately. Long strides carrying him through the doorway. I followed without thinking. Noah sat exactly where I left him, curled tightly beneath his blanket, with frightened eyes fixed on the door. The second he saw his father, his tiny shoulders stiffened. That hurt to witness more than it should have. Nathaniel approached the bed slowly, careful, almost uncertain, like he did not fully know how to comfort his own child anymore. Noah, he said quietly. Did you touch the note? Noah shook his head fast. It was under my pillow. Nathaniel crouched beside the bed, expensive black slacks folding against the hardwood floor. Did you see anyone come into your room tonight? Another small shake of the head. Then Noah looked toward me instead of his father. Emily found it. Nathaniel's eyes lifted toward me again. I suddenly understood something terrifying about powerful men. It was not the shouting you feared. It was the silence. The careful observation. The way they studied every detail while giving away absolutely nothing themselves. Nathaniel stood slowly. Everyone out, he ordered. 2 guards entered immediately from the hallway. Sweep the entire east wing. Check every camera between midnight and now. Nobody leaves this property. One of the guards hesitated slightly. Sir. The cameras on the second floor lost signal for 47 seconds around 1:37. My stomach dropped. Nathaniel's expression never changed. But the room somehow felt colder. And the backup system, disabled manually. Noah suddenly reached for my hand before I could step away. Small fingers wrapping tightly around mine. Please do not leave. The room went completely still. One of the guards glanced at Nathaniel carefully, like even breathing too loudly might become dangerous. Nathaniel looked down at his son, holding on to me with desperate trust. Then his pale gray eyes lifted slowly back to mine. Looks like you are staying tonight. Miss Carter. The mansion did not sleep after that. It breathed differently. Faster. Tighter. Like every person inside those walls understood something dangerous, had entered the house without anyone noticing. 2 more guards appeared outside Noah's bedroom within minutes. Men in dark suits with wires curled behind their ears, and expressions carved from stone. One stood near the staircase, while another checked every window in the hallway twice. I stayed beside Noah's bed because every time I moved more than 3 feet away, panic flashed across his face again. Nathaniel noticed it too. He noticed everything. He stood near the fireplace at the far end of the room, speaking quietly into his phone while rain battered the windows behind him. I want every employee background checked again, he said calmly. Tonight. The calmness somehow made the words more unsettling. Noah shifted beside me beneath the blanket. Is Daddy mad? I looked toward Nathaniel instinctively. His back remained turned to us. broad shoulders outlined by firelight and storm shadows. "No," I answered softly. "He is worried." Noah stared down at his hands for several seconds. "He gets quiet when he is scared." The words hit me harder than they should have. Children always understood more than adults believed. Nathaniel ended the call and slipped the phone into his coat pocket before finally turning toward us again. His gaze landed briefly on Noah, softened for half a second, then disappeared behind that cold control again. "You should rest," he told his son. Noah immediately shook his head. "I do not want the lights off." Nathaniel glanced toward me. "Leave the lamps on." I nodded once and adjusted the dim bedside light lower instead of turning it off completely. The warm glow softened the shadows in the room slightly. Noah finally leaned back against his pillows, exhaustion pulling at his small face even though fear still lingered in his eyes. Nathaniel watched quietly while I tucked the blanket higher around Noah's shoulders. Something unreadable flickered across his expression again. Not suspicion this time. Something closer to confusion. Like he was seeing a scene he no longer fully understood how to participate in himself. After several minutes, Noah's breathing slowed. Not asleep yet, but close. Nathaniel motioned subtly toward the hallway. I hesitated before carefully standing from the bed. Noah's fingers tightened briefly around my sleeve. "You are coming back, I promise." Only then did he let go. The hallway felt colder after leaving the warmth of the bedroom. Nathaniel closed the door quietly behind us. And suddenly the silence between us felt enormous. Up close, the scent of rain and expensive cologne still clung faintly to him beneath the sharper smell of smoke drifting from downstairs fireplaces. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. 11 days. His eyes narrowed slightly. "And in 11 days, my son trusts you more than trained staff who have been here for years." I crossed my arms instinctively against the cold. Maybe because I speak to him like he is a child and not a security assignment. The words slipped out before I could stop them. One of the guards farther down the hallway looked mildly horrified. Nathaniel simply stared at me, long enough that I suddenly became aware of how reckless that answer sounded. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not a smile exactly, more like the memory of one. Most people are afraid to speak honestly around me. Most people are probably smarter than I am. That almost smile vanished immediately when another guard approached quickly from the staircase. "Sir." Nathaniel turned instantly. What we reviewed the second-floor footage. The guard handed over a tablet with security recordings paused on screen. No unauthorized entry appeared in the hallway. I frowned slightly. That is impossible. The guard glanced toward me briefly before continuing. However, he enlarged part of the footage. My breath caught immediately, at exactly 137 a.m. Every camera feed glitched black for 47 seconds. And right before the image disappeared completely, a figure stood at the end of the hallway outside Noah's room. A woman wearing staff uniform white, holding something in her hands. Nathaniel's eyes slowly shifted toward me. For one horrible second, nobody moved. Rain battered the tall windows behind us while the frozen image glowed from the tablet screen like a ghost caught between frames. The woman in white stood near Noah's bedroom door, with her head slightly lowered. One hand visible against the dark hallway, holding something small, folded. My mouth went dry instantly. "That is not me," I said quietly. One of the guards shifted his stance beside the staircase. Suspicious. Ready. Nathaniel never looked away from the screen. "Zoom in." The guard obeyed immediately. The image sharpened slightly before turning grainy again. White uniform. Blonde hair pulled back. Similar height to mine. Similar build. But not me. I stepped closer without thinking. "Wait." Nathaniel glanced at me briefly. What I pointed toward the screen. Her shoes. The hallway fell silent again. The woman in the footage wore black shoes with a silver buckle near the ankle. Expensive. Elegant. Definitely not part of the staff uniform. I looked down at my own plain dark sneakers, still damp from running across the east wing earlier. House staff wear flat non-slip shoes. I said carefully. Those are heels. The guard holding the tablet frowned immediately. Nathaniel's pale gray eyes narrowed slightly as he studied the image again. Then slowly, very slowly, he looked toward me. The suspicion in his expression eased just enough for me to breathe again. Who else wears white in this house? He asked. Kitchen staff sometimes. Cleaning staff during daytime shifts. I hesitated. But nobody should have been upstairs after midnight except me. Nathaniel handed the tablet back to the guard. Pull personnel records for every female employee currently on the property. Yes. Sir. The guard disappeared quickly downstairs. Silence settled heavily between us again after he left. I crossed my arms tighter against the cold creeping through the hallway. The mansion suddenly felt less like a home and more like a maze filled with strangers pretending to belong there. Nathaniel watched me for several long seconds before speaking again. You noticed the shoes immediately. Because I grew up poor. The answer slipped out before I could stop it. His eyebrow lifted slightly. I swallowed. When you grow up with one pair of shoes every school year, you notice expensive ones. Something unreadable flickered across his face again. Not pity. Nathaniel Blackwood did not look like a man familiar with pity. More like curiosity. Careful curiosity. Before either of us could speak again, a small sound came from inside Noah's bedroom. A frightened whimper. I moved instantly toward the door without thinking. Nathaniel followed a second later. Noah sat upright in bed, breathing hard. His eyes fixed toward the corner of the room near the toy shelves. There, he whispered shakily. Someone was standing there. I crossed the room quickly and switched on another lamp beside the bookshelf. Warm light flooded the corner immediately. Empty. Just stuffed dinosaurs and children's books neatly arranged beneath framed photos of Noah with his mother years earlier. My chest tightened slightly at the pictures. Noah looked happier in every single one. Less afraid. Nathaniel approached the bed slowly. There is nobody here. Noah shook his head harder. I heard whispering. Then suddenly he looked directly at me again instead of his father. Check, mister. Buttons. I frowned. Your teddy bear. Noah nodded quickly. The old brown teddy bear sat near the pillows beside him. Slightly worn from years of being carried around by small hands. I picked it up carefully. At first, nothing seemed strange. Then my fingers brushed against rough stitching near the back seam. Fresh stitching. My pulse jumped instantly. Nathaniel. His eyes sharpened immediately. I turned the bear over and pressed gently against the fabric. Something hard shifted inside the stuffing. Small. Mechanical. The room went completely still. Nathaniel stepped closer, while I carefully loosened part of the newly sewn seam with trembling fingers. Then a tiny red light blinked once from inside the toy. A tracking device. Noah's breathing broke into frightened little gasps beside us. But Nathaniel never looked at the device. He was staring directly at the bedroom door. Like he suddenly realized something far worse than surveillance had entered his house. The tiny red light inside the teddy bear blinked once more before Nathaniel closed his hand around the device completely. The movement was calm, controlled, but the air in the room shifted so sharply that even Noah felt it. I saw the fear return instantly to the little boy's face. Daddy, he whispered. Nathaniel looked at his son immediately. Whatever storm had appeared behind those pale gray eyes disappeared just as fast. You are safe, he said quietly. Noah searched his father's expression for a long moment, like he was trying to decide whether to believe him. Then his gaze drifted back toward me instead. Can Emily stay? The question landed softly in the middle of all that tension. But somehow it changed the entire room. Nathaniel stood beside the bed for several seconds without answering. The expensive black watch at his wrist caught the warm light from the bedside lamp, while rain continued hammering against the windows outside. Finally, he nodded once. Yes. Noah's breathing eased slightly for the first time all night. Nathaniel turned toward one of the guards standing outside the bedroom door. No one enters this floor without my approval. Yes. Sir. And bring Daniel upstairs. The guard hesitated almost imperceptibly before nodding. Immediately, he disappeared down the hallway while Nathaniel slipped the tracking device into his coat pocket. I carefully resewed the small opening in the teddy bear with trembling fingers from Noah's sewing kit while he watched me closely from the bed. "Will Mr. Buttons be okay now?" he asked quietly. I managed a small smile. He survived surgery. Noah almost smiled back. Almost. It struck me then how young he still was beneath all this fear. 6-year-olds should worry about cartoons and scraped knees, not hidden notes and security lockdowns. A few minutes later, heavy footsteps approached through the hallway. An older man entered the bedroom carrying himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years inside this house. Late 60s, maybe. Silver hair neatly combed back. Dark tailored suit perfectly pressed despite the middle of the night. His face softened immediately when he saw Noah. "Young master," he said gently. Noah sat up slightly. "Hi." "Daniel." Nathaniel remained near the fireplace, watching both of them carefully. "Close the door," he said. Daniel obeyed immediately before turning toward Nathaniel again. "You requested me." "Sir, the cameras were disabled tonight." Daniel's expression darkened slightly. "I heard." Nathaniel stepped forward slowly. Someone entered Noah's room. For the first time since entering, genuine shock crossed Daniel's face. Nathaniel removed the tracking device from his pocket and placed it carefully on the desk beside the bed. The tiny red light blinked once beneath the lamp glow. Daniel stared at it in silence. Then his face drained of color. "Who would do this?" I watched Nathaniel carefully. He never answered immediately anymore. Every silence felt deliberate, calculated. "That is exactly what I intend to find out." Daniel looked genuinely shaken as he stepped closer to inspect the device. But something about the interaction suddenly bothered me. Small, subtle, a strange feeling settling low in my stomach. My eyes drifted downward without thinking. Daniel wore polished black shoes beneath his tailored pants. Expensive shoes, with silver buckles near the ankles. Me pulse stopped cold. The exact same shoes from the security footage. I stared at them, while every instinct inside me screamed at once. Nathaniel noticed the shift in my expression immediately. "Emily." His voice lowered slightly. "Careful now. Dangerous." "What is it?" Daniel looked toward me politely. Confused. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out at first. Then finally, quietly. The woman in the hallway footage. Both men froze. I forced myself to look up from the silver buckles on Daniel's shoes. She was wearing shoes exactly like those. Silence crashed through the room so hard, it almost hurt. Daniel looked down instinctively at his own feet, then slowly back at me. "Miss Carter," he said carefully. "These belong to my wife." Nathaniel's eyes sharpened instantly. "Your wife is dead." Daniel swallowed once. "Yes." "Sir." Then his voice lowered almost to a whisper. "But someone has been inside my quarters." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees after Daniel spoke. Rain rattled softly against the windows while nobody moved for several long seconds. Noah sat frozen beneath his blanket, watching all of us with frightened eyes, far too old for a child his age. Nathaniel's expression became unreadable again. Worse than anger. Worse than panic. This was calculation. The kind, powerful men used when they realized betrayal had already crossed their front door. "Explain," he said quietly. Daniel swallowed once before answering. "My wife's belongings were packed into storage after she passed away last year." His voice sounded strained now, shaken in a way that felt painfully genuine. The shoes should not have been accessible to anyone. Nathaniel stepped closer slowly. "Who has access to your quarters?" "Only housekeeping and senior staff." My stomach tightened. Senior staff. That narrowed things down inside a mansion this size. Nathaniel's pale gray eyes drifted toward the tracking device still blinking softly on the desk. And yet someone walked freely into my son's room wearing your dead wife's shoes. Daniel lowered his head slightly. Yes. Sir. Noah suddenly spoke from the bed in a small, trembling voice. I do not like this. Every adult in the room softened instantly at the sound of fear breaking through his words. I crossed back toward the bed automatically and sat carefully beside him. Hey. I lowered my voice gently. Look at me. Noah's breathing came too fast again. Bad people are inside the house. I hesitated. Children deserved honesty, but not terror. Then we stay smart. I whispered. Okay, he nodded weakly, though his small fingers still twisted tightly into the blanket. Nathaniel watched us from across the room. Something distant flickered across his face again, while Noah slowly calmed beneath my voice. Grief, maybe. Or regret, like he hated the fact that his son reached for comfort from a near stranger instead of him. A sudden crackle exploded through one of the security radios near the doorway. Every guard immediately straightened. Sir. Nathaniel turned sharply. What static hissed loudly for half a second. Then a tense voice answered through the radio. Motion alert near the west service corridor. Daniel frowned instantly. That hallway leads to the old staff entrance. Nathaniel's eyes hardened. Lock down the lower level. Another burst of static interrupted him. Sir. The electronic locks are offline. Silence crashed into the room again. My pulse jumped painfully hard. Offline, the guard repeated into the radio. How no answer came back immediately. Just static. Nathaniel moved instantly toward the door. Daniel. Stay with Noah. Sir. Then his gaze shifted toward me. Emily. Something about the way he said my name made my heartbeat stumble unexpectedly. Firm. Certain. Like he already trusted me more than he intended to. Stay inside this room. I nodded automatically. Nathaniel disappeared into the hallway with 3 guards moving behind him in perfect formation. The door shut heavily. Moments later, Noah stared toward it after his father vanished. He always leaves. He whispered quietly. The sadness in his voice nearly broke me. Daniel looked away toward the fireplace with visible discomfort. I sat beside Noah carefully. He came back tonight. Noah shook his head slightly against the pillow. Only because somebody scared him. Before I could answer. Every light in the room suddenly flickered once. Twice. Then the entire east wing went dark. Noah gasped instantly. Somewhere downstairs. Alarms began echoing faintly through the mansion. Daniel moved toward the door immediately. Stay here. His silhouette disappeared into the black hallway while emergency backup lights glowed dim red near the floorboards. Noah's breathing turned panicked beside me. Emily. I am here. I reached for his hand in the darkness. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow footsteps approaching outside the bedroom. Not rushed like security. Calm. Deliberate. My blood turned cold instantly. The doorknob moved slightly. The sound of the doorknob turning slowly in the dark nearly stopped my heart. Noah's fingers crushed mine beneath the blanket, while the emergency lights cast deep red shadows across the walls like something out of a nightmare. Every instinct inside me screamed to stay quiet. Stay still. The handle shifted another inch. Slow. Careful. Whoever stood outside was not trying to force the door open. They already expected access. I slid off the bed silently and pulled Noah gently with me. Come here. I whispered. My voice barely sounded like my own. Noah obeyed instantly. Small hands shaking as I guided him toward the narrow space beside the bookshelf near the fireplace. The room felt enormous in the darkness now. Too many corners. Too many shadows. The door creaked open softly. My pulse hammered so violently I could hear it in my ears. A figure stepped inside. Tall. Slim. Dressed in white. Noah buried his face against my side with a terrified little gasp. The figure paused just inside the doorway, as though searching the room. Then another lightning flash exploded beyond the windows for half a second, illuminating the bedroom in bright silver light. Blonde hair, pale face, white housekeeping uniform. My breath caught instantly. It was not a stranger. It was Clara, one of the downstairs cleaning staff. I had passed her twice earlier that week, carrying fresh towels through the west hallways. She looked younger now under the emergency lights. Mid-20s maybe. But her expression did not look threatening. It looked terrified. Clara spotted us near the bookshelf and froze completely. "Please," she whispered urgently. "You have to get him out of this room." I tightened my grip around Noah instinctively. "What are you talking about?" Tears glistened in Clara's eyes. "The security team is compromised." The words landed like ice water down my spine. Clara stepped farther inside and quickly shut the bedroom door behind her. I saw two men near the service entrance downstairs. They are not Blackwood security. My stomach dropped violently. "Where is Nathaniel, the west corridor?" Her voice shook harder now. "But I think they sent him there on purpose." Noah looked up at me with frightened eyes. "Emily," Clara reached into the pocket of her white uniform slowly. My entire body tensed until she pulled out a small brass key. "There is an old servant staircase behind the laundry room. It leads outside near the greenhouse." I stared at her. "Why are you helping us?" Her face crumpled slightly. "Because Noah's mother saved my sister's life 3 years ago." The room went silent, except for the rain hammering the windows. Clara swallowed hard. I owed her, somewhere downstairs. Another alarm suddenly blared, louder than before. Then came shouting. Distant footsteps. Running. Noah flinched hard against me. Clara stepped backward toward the door immediately. "You need to go now. Come with us." She shook her head instantly. "If I disappear too, they will know somebody warned you." The lights flickered once more overhead. My pulse raced painfully, while every possible decision collided inside my head at once. Trusting strangers inside a mansion full of hidden enemies sounded insane. But Noah's terrified breathing against my arm reminded me of one thing clearly. Staying here was worse. Clara moved toward the bookshelf quickly and pressed against part of the wood paneling near the corner. A hidden latch clicked softly. Then part of the wall shifted inward several inches. My eyes widened. Behind it sat a narrow, dark passage barely wide enough for one adult. "Go," Clara whispered urgently. "Before somebody realizes the East Wing cameras are back online." I crouched quickly beside Noah. "Can you walk quietly for me?" He nodded shakily. I took his hand tightly and guided him toward the hidden staircase. Before stepping inside, I looked back once more at Clara, standing alone in the dim red emergency lights. "Thank you." Her eyes filled slightly as she nodded. "Protect him." Then suddenly, heavy footsteps thundered somewhere outside the bedroom. Male voices. Getting closer fast, Clara shoved the hidden panel harder toward us. "Now." The passage closed, just as the bedroom door burst open outside. The hidden staircase smelled like dust, old wood, and rain seeping through stone walls that had not seen sunlight in decades. Noah's tiny hand clung so tightly to mine that my fingers ached. But I did not loosen my grip for even a second. Behind us, muffled voices exploded inside the bedroom we had just escaped from. Male voices. Angry. Searching. Clara's voice answered calmly somewhere beyond the wall. And then everything blurred together beneath the pounding of my own heartbeat. "Keep moving," I whispered softly to Noah. The narrow stairs twisted downward beneath dim emergency lights mounted low along the walls. My shoulder brushed rough stone as we descended carefully one step at a time. Noah stumbled once from exhaustion, and I caught him immediately against my side. "I am sorry," he whispered shakily. The apology nearly broke me. "Hey," I crouched briefly beside him halfway down the stairs. "None of this is your fault." His green eyes shimmered with fear in the darkness. The exact same eyes as his father. Bad things happen because of me. No. I brushed damp hair gently back from his forehead. Bad things happen because some people choose to be cruel. That has nothing to do with you. Noah stared at me silently for a long moment, before nodding once. Then we kept moving. The staircase finally opened into a narrow laundry corridor, lined with old shelves and abandoned cleaning carts covered beneath white sheets. Thunder shook the mansion overhead, while emergency lights flickered weakly along the ceiling. Somewhere above us, alarms still echoed faintly through the house. I spotted the back exit near the far wall immediately. Rain lashed violently against the small glass window in the door. Freedom. Almost. Then voices drifted from the corridor ahead. Male voices. Close. I froze instantly and pulled Noah behind one of the old laundry carts. Two men crossed the hallway seconds later, wearing dark security uniforms. But something felt wrong immediately. Their movements lacked the discipline of Nathaniel's actual security team. One of them laughed under his breath while checking his phone. The kid could not have gone far. My blood ran cold. Noah pressed silently against my side, trembling hard. The second man glanced toward the laundry room entrance. Boss said the woman matters too now. Woman. Me. Every instinct inside me screamed to run. The men continued farther down the hallway, their footsteps fading slowly toward the west wing. I exhaled shakily for the first time in almost a minute. Then suddenly another voice echoed sharply behind us. Emily. I spun around so fast my heart nearly stopped. Nathaniel stood at the opposite end of the corridor, drenched in rainwater and shadows, breathing harder than I had seen all night. 3 guards surrounded him with weapons drawn low beside their legs. But Nathaniel barely seemed aware of anyone else in the room. His eyes locked directly onto Noah, then onto me. Relief hit his face so fast and so powerfully that it almost looked painful. Noah broke first. Daddy. Nathaniel crossed the corridor in seconds and dropped to one knee as Noah crashed against him. For the first time all night, the cold, controlled mask shattered completely from Nathaniel's face. He wrapped both arms around his son tightly, eyes closing briefly, like he had just survived something far worse than fear. Noah buried his face against his father's shoulder. Emily saved me. Nathaniel looked up at me then. Really looked at me. Rainwater slid slowly down the sharp line of his jaw, while exhaustion and gratitude collided openly in his pale gray eyes. Are you hurt? He asked quietly. I shook my head. Noah is okay. Nathaniel stood slowly while still keeping one arm protectively around his son. The hallway lights flickered once more overhead. Somewhere in the distance, police sirens began echoing faintly beyond the storm outside. One of the guards approached carefully. Sir. The remaining intruders have been removed from the property. Nathaniel never looked away from me. Good. Silence settled softly between us after the guard stepped back. Noah still clung tightly to his father's coat with one hand while reaching toward me with the other. Without thinking, I took it. Nathaniel watched our joined hands for a long moment. Then something inside his expression shifted. Smaller than a smile. Bigger than gratitude. I spent years building walls around this family, he said quietly. And tonight, the only person who truly protected my son was someone those walls almost never allowed inside. Rain hammered the mansion windows behind us, while dawn slowly began lightening the horizon beyond the storm. And standing there between the frightened little boy holding both our hands, I realized something dangerous had changed forever inside that house.